Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our very first August Washington Broker Roundtable on key tips for staying in compliance, hosted by our Washington broker, Grover Naslund. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that by referring an agent to Allison James, you can earn a monthly or yearly residual income. For the first 3 agents you refer, you will receive a 10% override. When you refer 4 to 20 agents, you receive 15%. And when you refer more than 20, you receive 20%. Now, 10, 15, and 20% of what? Well, that's where our 3 plans come into play. First, we have Plan A. Plan A is $3,950 for the entire year. On this plan, agents keep 100% of their commission. Therefore, if you refer an agent and they join us on Plan A, you will receive $395 per year. Next, we have Plan B. Plan B is $395 per month. Agents also keep 100% of their commission on this plan. If you refer an agent who joins us on Plan B, you'll receive $39.50 per month. Lastly, we have Plan C. Plan C is $35 a month. If you refer an agent who joins on Plan C, you receive $3.50 a month. Now, I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but there's more. With Plan C, agents pay a $360 transaction fee for each transaction they close, and you, as the referring agent, will earn 10% of the transaction fee for each and every transaction they close. So, if they close a transaction every month, you are earning an extra $36 per month plus the $350, which now brings your total to $39.50 a month, which is the same monthly income as referring an agent who joins on Plan B. If you need marketing materials to refer other agents to Allison James, please go to Allison James University, click on the Referrals tab. From there, you will find marketing materials with more information on Allison James that you can show to other agents. If you have any questions, please email support@ajicorporate.com. If you have any questions throughout today's webinar, please go ahead and put them in your GoToWebinar control panel, or if you're joining us live on Facebook, please comment in the comment box below. With that being said, I would now like to pass it over to our wonderful broker, Grover Naslund. Hi, Grover.
How you doing? Hi, everybody. So, okay, compliance. We're going to start. We're dealing with compliance. We have 2 things we're dealing with. We have our state Department of Licensing, and then of course we have Allison James, which most of their rules are based on what our state rules as well. And probably the most important one that we need to talk about and gets neglected the most is the 48-hour rule. State law requires that every deal be turned into the office within 48 hours of being written, listing or a deal or a combination thereof. And not only is it important for state compliance and Allison James, it's important because I review all the deals. And if there's a problem with a contract, missing initial, something like that, then it needs to be addressed early on in the process. Otherwise, you get halfway through the deal and find out that we have an unenforceable contract, which is only a problem if a problem develops. It's kind of like driving a car without insurance. It's okay as long as you don't get in an accident. But if you do, it's important to have all our ducks in a row. So just remember, it's not us being fussy. It's the law, and also we can get fined, and we do get audited. So that's one of the most important aspects of that portion of being in compliance. The next thing I want to talk about is our marketing material. I've seen a lot of email addresses out there that would say, just as an example, Bob Smith Realty. Well, according to the Department of Licensing, that sounds like a real estate company. If you said Bob Smith Realtor, it doesn't sound like a real estate company. So we have to be careful about what we put on our marketing material, whether it's in the form of an email address or whether it's just in our, Facebook, ads on the internet, on our website, whichever it is. we need to make sure that it's clear that Allison James Estates and Homes is the real estate company. And then the other thing that I've noticed, that I'm not really sure what the solution is, but when it comes to a text message, when we have an email signature, we're supposed to put our name, the name of our company on there, and of course our contact information. But in a text message, there isn't room to spell out your name and Allison James Estates and Homes. So what I've done, and it isn't necessarily above board, but I put my name and Allison James Realty. Now, technically, Allison James Realty doesn't exist, but I've done it just because there's really nothing else that I can put down there that is compliant. So that's something that we need to, it needs to be addressed, actually. I actually made a suggestion to corporate that we create an Allison James Realty DBA just to use for this purpose. I don't know if that'll happen or not, but it's something that at some point we might want to look into. And the other thing about compliance is that it's more difficult, even though we do a lot of texting these days, it's more difficult to archive text than it is emails. Emails, it's easy. We can save them. We send them up to SkySlope when we're done with the transaction. Text is a little more cumbersome. So people need to remember that and save their texts as well as their emails. And that brings me to a compliance issue with our emails in SkySlope. I review all the deals that go through, and I can tell you I don't see a lot of people, there are some, but I don't see a lot of people uploading all their emails. I know it can be kind of cumbersome, but it's something that's important to do. There is a way, both in Outlook and in Gmail, there's an app, a plugin in Gmail where you can group all your emails together. So save them in a folder or a label, is what Gmail calls it. And then either at the end of the transaction or at different times during, you can select 1, 2, 5, 10, 50, 100 emails, and then forward them all into the transaction at once. And that's important, very important, that all of our files, all notes, all addendums, everything that has to do with the transaction ends up in SkySlope. And again, if there's never an issue with the file, it's not going to be a problem down the road. But if there's ever a problem, if there's ever a lawsuit, those things need to be there. And one of the things problems we run into is that people, they get verbal communications with a client or another agent. So if you contact somebody on the phone and you say, okay, we are going to agree that such and such is going to happen, you should follow it up with an email. And that email then becomes your record of that confirmation. It can be, as per our conversation today, 2 o'clock, we agreed that. And then you now have a record of it. Otherwise, it's he said, she said. So that's pretty important. And again, we are required by state law to save all of our information, documents, notes, emails for a given transaction for 3 years. So this is complying with the state as well as Allison James rules. Now, the 3 years is interesting because even though the state requires we keep these documents on all our deals for 3 years, the statute of limitations on a lawsuit is 7 years. And so they really shouldn't be getting rid of these after 3 years. Now, I keep files on my computer as well as, I keep a complete file of all my transactions on my computer as well as on SkySlope. And my computer is backed up online. So if ever crashes, I can retrieve all my documents. And not only do I keep them for 7 years, but since they're in a digital format, I don't really ever get rid of them. They just take up a little disk space. Back when we had paper files, it was a different thing. But In this particular case, it's important to save these things because we do have some complaints from time to time that issues that come up in transactions, and we've got to have all our ducks in a row. So that's kind of where I am for those. Now, in general marketing, it's easy to forget that when we do a Facebook ad, when we do a flyer, when we do anything that has to do with our marketing, we have to comply with the rules as well. So if you have a Craigslist ad, it needs to have the name of the company, it needs to have your name, your contact information. Anywhere we do any advertising for our business, it has to have everything included. So that is very important as well. One other thing I wanted to touch on was the addendum on the MLS 41D, which is an inspector disclosure. And that is if you have either a familiar or a prior business relationship with an inspector, it needs to be disclosed. And now a business relationship doesn't mean you've used them as an inspector before or recommended them as an inspector before. But my suggestion, as always, when you're not sure, is to read this addendum 41D and familiarize yourself with it and make sure that it is something when it needs to be used, that it is used. Now, it is a disclosure, which means it is not part of the purchase and sale agreement. It has nothing to do with both parties. It is between you and your client, and your client can be either the buyer or the seller, but it's important. Now, I was also told by an auditor, this is still on the inspection subject, I was also told by a Department of Licensing auditor that we are required when we recommend an inspector to recommend 3 different names, so as not to show favoritism. This came about through some corruption in the business where inspectors were kind of fudging reports because they had a relationship with an agent. So I am told that we need to, every time we recommend an agent, even though we may have an inspector, even though we may have a favorite, that we should recommend 3. Now, on another conversation I had with the Department of Licensing, they told me that that's not the case, that it is not required. So what do? We err on the side of caution. If you're going to recommend an inspector, give them more than 1 name. Give them 3 names. You can tell them which one you recommend and which one your clients have used in the past, but give them a choice as not to show too much favoritism, because we don't want to be accused of using an inspector that will give us let's say a light report just so a deal doesn't fall apart. So that's important too. In fact, we may amend our independent contractors agreement with a paragraph about that. I'm still working with Jill on that at this point, come up with some verbiage. So that is the inspection part. And those are really the main subjects I wanted to touch on, is mostly because these are the ones that have been coming up in our day-to-day activity recently. Again, the 48-hour rule for compliance is so important. Marketing, I know a lot of people have emails out there that might have their name and the word real estate on it. You have to be careful about that, because I know no one wants to change their email address, but if you do have an email address that says Bob Smith Realty or real estate, you might want to think about getting a new email address and working in slowly, because changing your email address can affect your business. And it's also one of those things, if you don't get caught and nobody files a complaint, but we don't want to wait for that. And then emails and SkySlope, and not just emails, but other documents. When I open up a document in SkySlope or open up a file, and I see nothing but the required documents in order to get that file approved, it makes me wonder, where are all the other documents? Because there's no way we get into a transaction, get all the way to the end, and then all we have is those documents. There are always other things, whether it's a Word doc and you write notes about conversations or timelines or whatever else, and you should be doing that, by the way. You should be documenting what you do. And then again, home inspectors. It's important that we stay in compliance with these things because there are fines involved. And plus, we just want to do the right thing. So that is basically what I have. Now, do we have, are we set up so we can get some questions answered here?
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to comment them in the GoToWebinar control panel. Otherwise, if any questions come up later, you can always email Grover at wabroker@ajicorporate.com. Or if it's a question for corporate, you can always email us at support@ajicorporate.com as well. Let me check Facebook, see if we have any questions there.
How about you? Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, not at the moment. But I know where to find you if I do.
Yeah.
All right, I'll give you guys just a few more minutes if you want to ask any questions. Do you want to wrap up with any last minute thoughts, Grover?
I think, no, actually, that was my wrap up. Just kind of, it's a little shorter than I planned on going, but just to the importance of these things that I've touched on, because it's only when there's a problem that these missing issues come into effect. Mm-hmm. And we don't want that to happen. When somebody sues somebody, we have to be able to, whether we're involved directly or whether it's just between the buyer and seller, if there's a problem with the file or a document in the file, it's going to come out. And so we want to prevent that, and we want to make sure everything's taken care of in advance. Plus, when it comes to our marketing and stuff, again, staying in compliance. It's very important. Otherwise, one of these days, someone's going to call the Department of Licensing. We will see an issue pop up, and that's something we do not want.
Yes, we definitely want to avoid that at all costs. So it doesn't look like any questions are coming through, but if anything comes up later on, remember you can email Grover at wabroker@ajicorporate.com. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on our first Washington Broker Roundtable. And, of course, a special thank you to Grover for putting together a great topic and presentation. We will see you all next month for another Washington Broker Roundtable. Thanks again for joining, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Bye.
Bye.